The title of this presentation is Bullying is Behavior That No One Forgets. And before I start, I'd like to just share a short story with you. I was doing a in-service in my home school district going back many years. And the in-service wasn't even on bullying. It was on another topic. But what happened was I mentioned bullying for a brief couple of seconds. And when I gave the group a break, what happened is one of the members, the participants, came up to me and looked at me and he said to me, "You were bullied by Tommy too." And I looked at him and I recognized him as Tommy's cousin. And Tommy was a boy in the neighborhood who was bigger than us, meaning the two of us, and he just terrorized us. And it was very difficult to manage. And I asked this young man, I said to him, where is Tommy now? And his comment to me was, "I don't care, I don't know, and he could be anywhere, but as long as he's away from me, I'm fine." And he was still affected by what Tommy had done to him. But the scary part was, when he mentioned Tommy's name, I turned around and I said, "Is he here?" And I still felt that my cold feet and almost the shiver up my spine when I thought of Tommy, who I hadn't thought about for a long time. And it really put me in a position where I began to realize that bullying is behavior that no one forgets. There's a supporting article on the website that you can take a look at. It's part of the course that describes this whole event. Tommy was mean to us, rude, discourteous. He hit us. He used to hold this kid underwater when they were in a swimming pool. He was absolutely a terrifying person, and we never forgot it. And if he hadn't brought it up, I probably would still have forgotten about Tommy, but just the mention of his name made me nervous. And we have kids in school today who are going through this and are going to take their emotions with them to another place. And that place is adulthood. And we have to be ready and we have to understand why this behavior is so damaging and can be so have such an effect on the people who are victimized. Now, the question is, why don't we forget? Well, number one, bullying is traumatizing. You have men who come home from the service with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they are affected for the rest of their lives by some of the things that happened to them and some of the things that they observed. Young children are on the battlefield in school if they are victimized. They get traumatized and they don't know how to manage that trauma. Why don't we forget? Because we're reminded of it every time we have a confrontation. When we get ready to confront somebody as an adult, we're either going to do one of two things. We're either going to go full bore and we're going to go into the fight mode, or we're going to go into the flight mode. And the scary part is victims will usually go into the flight mode, and they will be angry when they do it. And that's part of the problem. Every time we have a confrontation that we can't manage, we feel like failures. And we're reminded of what happened to us when we were younger. Why don't we forget? We live in fear of certain personality types. We don't want to be around people who are aggressive, or we don't know how to manage that type of behavior. So what starts to happen is we play avoidance. We avoid people on the job. We avoid certain personalities in our neighborhood. We avoid certain personalities in school when we go to college. We even potentially have to pick our teachers the right way, because sometimes those personalities can remind us of what happened to us. Scary part is we react inwardly, but outwardly we remain silent. And victims who have not overcome some of this trauma are sitting on certain behaviors, sitting on certain emotions that may cause them to act out down the road. And we all know what some of that acting out can look like. We fail at relationships. We can't handle criticism or constructive suggestion. We have difficulty managing sometimes our spouse, our brothers, our sisters. We can't get into a close relationship because we fear that the closer we get, and this holds true for anyone, the closer we get, the more ammunition someone will have to bully us. We lament what we could have said to someone after we were bullied again. How many times have you walked away from a conversation and said to somebody else, if he says something like that to me again, you know what I'm going to tell him? But we never do. And that becomes the reminder of what happened to us when we were younger. Now, we know what may have happened to us as children and the impact that it is having on us as adults. But what can we do to help kids? Number one, we have to coach them. Coaching is not just about sports, there's life coaching as well. And with young children, what we have to do is we have to give them certain skills slowly that's age appropriate that will help them manage certain behaviors in others. At a young age, we have to teach them to say, stop, knock it off. Or they could say, that's not kind. They have to develop a small amount of confidence when they're younger and let that confidence grow. Kids also have to be reminded that you only have to be brave for 2 minutes at a time. You don't have to walk around brave all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes fear is good. And we want to avoid certain people or situations at certain times. But when we have to be brave for 2 minutes at a time. That's all. We have to teach kids to forgive, but draw healthy boundaries. That means when someone says to them, I'm sorry, and they extend their hand to shake hands, that person should say, I forgive you, but they need to also say, don't let it happen again. That's their way of drawing healthy boundaries. Instruct these kids on how to choose friends. Sometimes friends can turn into enemies. I mean, I've seen it in school many times. Kids would have a fight. Before you know it, I'd call the parent up on the phone. The parent would say to me, who did my son have the fight with? I would give the name, and the parent would say, he just had dinner here last night. There are friends, and then there are close friends who will never do anything to hurt you. And we have to be aware of who our close friends are, and we have to keep our friends close. This is what we're teaching kids now, and our enemies closer. Help them pick and choose their battles. You know, they're going to have battles, but they don't have to have one all the time. And if they get on the battlefield, you have to help them get off. and help them be aware that that may not have been the fight that you wanted to pick, or that may not have been the situation that you wanted to be in and you needed to just walk away. The next few on how we can help kids teach them how to walk with confidence, with their head up and their shoulders back. That, and have their books under their arm and help them not to be always looking over their shoulder. And give them the coaching so that they can move through the hallways and not be sitting in a classroom wondering who's going to confront them when they leave to walk down the hall to go to lunch. And lastly, we have to encourage the victims to share information only when appropriate. Oftentimes, kids who are bullied can also be somewhat silly. They can share information that other kids are going to use to bully them. And we want to give them the skills so that they know what to share and what not to share. Oftentimes, kids will share information because they think they're going to attract friends. The bottom line is, what will happen is they will begin to use this child as the court jester, and he will act silly, but he won't even realize that he is being bullied in the process. Just because other people are laughing, they may not be laughing with him, they may be laughing at him. Bullying is behavior that no one forgets. We have to be aware of it with our students, and we have to be aware of it even in our own lives, so we can determine where some of the emotions come from within us that kick around, that may give us a hard time with other people and sometimes in difficult situations. This concludes this podcast.